Your main man Underwood returning, and today I'm going to be doing a video request. This video is about how to run a game for a child. The child's first time into a role-playing game. And I'm going to kind of walk through what I plan. I put a lot of thought into what I plan to do when my son, who many of you have seen in my videos, peeking around, is ready. And he loves role-playing already. He's talking to me, oh, I'm playing Dungeons & Dragons now. He'll be sitting there like coloring stuff and like making up things, and it's very cool. It'll be like, oh, this is this monster, and this is this monster, and he'll pick up the books and look and say, what's this? What's this? What's this? And that goes, you know, that goes on for a long time. When you look at the monster manual, like 300 monsters in there, I'm like, okay, that's audio. All right, that's a beholder. All right, so it goes on, and he loves it. He loves to read about it. He loves monsters, and I have. The first thing we're talking about is how to prep your child for our life of RPGs. From the time they're very young, you want to surround them with all sorts of fictional fantasy elements and large amounts. So you're like, okay, that didn't work. Where do we catch it? Where do we get the hook into them? Because it's something I want to be able to share and experience with my son. Something that obviously help us have bonding time, have something to do together, and something that I'd be able to really enjoy being able to do with him over the years. Now, for me, some people are talking about, 6 years old or 7 years old. I personally think that's too young. I tried to start one of my nephews when he was 9. We did his first game, and it was real hard. Like, it was hard. And then I played him a little bit later. It was progressively easier. But I got some testing there. So for me, I started the first time I played was 10, and I think that's a very good age to start. A lot of the old D&D books were like, I think, age 10 or age 12. They said that's the beginning time. Some people go, oh, well, I did something with an 8-year-old or something and it worked. Okay, I mean, maybe you did, maybe you have. But personally, I think that's too young to really kind of captivate their. I mean, their attention spans all over the place. Their minds will wander. And for me, I think 10, you start forming it up. Now, first of all, you got to kind of have it like as a treat. Like, you're not probably going to be able to do this like every day or maybe even every week, depending, because it's going to be a whole different style of gaming. So what I plan to do, and I'm going to give you guys just a whole bop here, is first of all, for the first experience, don't give them all these choices. You don't want that. Don't show them advantages or races or weapons or any of that stuff. Don't give them a choice. Just say, okay, you're going to be a human of whatever gender you are, and have them roll with that. And don't specify them out to any kind of class or skill exactly. Let them build and then kind of see where they go, what they do, because it's the first time. And the more simple you can build it, remember they're a child, and the more complex you make it, the less likely they're going to get on board. I want to make it streamlined, easy to understand, and fun. So this is why I plan to lay it out. You wake up, you have amnesia, you don't know what you're doing. You're sitting in an underground chamber, and just have some normal clothes on, and then have them slowly going around exploring, seeing the things that are there, and finding different things like little pieces of equipment that might be helpful to do things if we can solve different ideas. I guess people might call puzzle type things. I really don't like to use that because there's so many horrendous ideas in the genre of puzzles and role playing games. But where he has challenges where he can solve in a non-aggressive way. Present him with challenges that he can solve in either an aggressive way by bashing something in the head, or the ability to actually role play with it by prompting some role play, and then see how does he respond. Does he want to bash it in the head, or does he want to role play with it? What's going to be fun for him? You have to keep him thoroughly engaged, and you have to continually initiate. So for me, everything is going to be initiated on him up until the point where I can see he can start initiating back. So he doesn't get overwhelmed. I saw it with my other nephew, who was like overwhelmed when we started doing things. And I stripped it down, went for a very simple style, but I went for a simple style of a real role-playing game, and it was just too much for him. I think, so basically, I think you're just walking along the corridor, explaining everything, describing so it doesn't really change, you're describing the walls, the moss, the mold, the fungus, the smell, the insects, so forth, but you don't have to keep, it just kind of goes on with the same deal. And then you introduce a different piece of stimuli, a monster or something, comes up and begins to interact. And then maybe he's like, oh, and he sticks it in a piece. So now he's seen what unarmed combat is, so he can beat it down. And then they go, okay, well, you beat that down. And oh, by the way, it had this little club on it. So it's like, oh, I'll take that club. Or it has these keys on it. Oh, I'll take keys. I can see that. That might be things that are going to immediately, particularly early on, give him things that are immediately going to be perceived in his mind as valuable. Not like, oh, I didn't get that, and you don't want to have him have regret. And you know, you don't want to do one of these horrible deals where you're like, oh, sorry, your character got killed, and make another one. Your character got killed, make another one. Your character got killed. I mean, that chases people away from the hobby, man. Let him enjoy the character. Let him get more in the mindset, and let him build the character, and then roll with that. Give him, you know, the whole thing. He goes through this whole little sort of maze, and then eventually gets out, and he gets to a very small little hamlet with just a few options. You don't want to overwhelm them. These aren't adults. They aren't of that sophistication level, and they're not going to want you to sit there and describe an immense amount of things. So describe well a few things. If you were trying to describe an intricate detail, complex metropolis, that would go way over their head. I don't care who your kid is, it's going to go way over their head. It's going to be too much. They're going to get bored with it after a while, because you got to do so. And if you think otherwise, you sure don't describe complex metropolises like I do. It's going to take an enormous amount of time. However, you know, 3 little buildings and a little hamlet, with way off in the distance, more like farms and rolling, and there's not really any option to really go anywhere else. Like, we go to farmland, or you go interact with these things, and you kind of have sort of clearer defined, more railroad style aspect, so that they can begin to learn how to think outside of the box, how to make choices. And then you have NPCs, so if they are role-playing, they can begin to develop relationships and explain, okay, well, there's that, and oh, by the way, I'm an NPC, and now you put sympathy on them, with them, hopefully, or maybe they bash them over the head and take their loot. Who knows what they want to do? They're going to be 10. Let them go however they want. You have to do this. Don't heavy-hand them, but don't micromanage them. Let them do what they want. But, you know, explain the concept of role-playing. As they've come through this whole dungeon, they've had some role-playing experience. They've had some experience of picking up and trying different weapons. You know, so many people that play games forever, and they're like, well, I never really used that weapon because it wasn't optimal. I never had a, let me try to think of a good example. I never had like a heavy mace. Heavy mace are pretty optimal, aren't they? But I never had a trident. I never used a trident before. Someone might say, I never used these pole arms. So put some things like that in there so they can have more flavor, more interesting, and look back and be like, oh yeah, I was using some cool stuff. Not just a bog standard scimitar and longsword, and two-handed sword, and even heavy mace. That's a pretty common one used in a lot of games. So that they are able to get different kinds of armor, able to slowly build up. And then by the time you get to the surface, right, you've had these encounters, you've had these experiences, you've shaped the idea. You've kind of already rewarded them with some skill points. You're like, oh, well, you managed to figure that out, so now you know you can do this kind of skill, or now you could do this. And once you've had it, that's simplistic. You get them up there, you have them role play, let them walk around the world, and they get sympathy, or if they begin to feel, tongue tie there, that they have some sympathy towards the one NPC, they want to help them. Maybe an NPC has a real simple, just incredibly basic quest. And no, this is not how I run a game for an adult. Not at all. These types of games are great for children, though, because they don't want all these choices. It's too much for them. It's too complex. Keep it simple so you can focus on description. You can focus on role-playing. You can attempt to begin to teach them the immersive style instead of going the opposite way and giving them everything, but just glossing over it all. I don't want to have them get in the mindset of, oh, let's gloss it over it. No, I'm going to describe it, we're going to get immersed, we're going to get involved in it, but I'm going to make all the choices, all the aspects, all the entities there simplistic enough that they can all be handled. And then I'm going to devise, maybe 19 different types of encounters in there. Just boom, 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 one after another. And there might be a few choices, too. There might be a few left door, right door kind of things. And I always honor choice, whatever behind the doors or behind it. It's not going to be, there were 5 doors there, but they all had one thing in them. It's whatever, So, allowing him to slowly go along at his own pace and trying to explain very rudimentary how to stay in character. So we have a place to build, how to play the character. And then you don't have choices. This is the thing that can be very hard for a lot of kids, is coming up with a name. Well, you have amnesia. You have no idea what your name is. You have no idea who you were or what your backstory was. So it's all wiped off. You don't have to worry a thing about that. However, you can even use that and like kind of give them some flashes, and so basically it's a way to prompt them. If they're stalling out, you can start flashing them information, give them a little cutscene, and that will maybe be enough to trigger them back into it. Because what your ultimate desire here is to make sure that your kid really has a good time. It's like, oh man, it was the best thing ever, Dad. I want to do that again, Dad. I want to spend time with Dad. I want to have this, deal. So then you're getting that quality time. You're getting that bonding. You don't want to turn them off from it. You don't want to make them have a negative experience. But, oh, I did it with my dad. I was 10. Oh, that kind of sucked. You want to be like, oh yeah, I did it with my dad when I was 3 days ago, and also 3 days before that, and going back to when I was 10. We've been playing this character like a motherfucker. Shit, don't act like you don't know I'm the king. Amnesia, I forgot about how I was even the prince, but because I got clubbed over the head by some brigands with that rugged, sluggish, buggish style and thrown out in the middle of nowhere to ransom me off later, but somehow I escaped. So, you can build things like that, and even have things, like I said, to prompt them in there to really have something cool. A kid is they want to have something cool, so I would try to ratchet up the cool factor, but at the same time, like, give them already pre-imposed sort of flaws, so that they're not in that min-max power game mentality of, well, I had to get the best. Let them go around and go, oh yeah, man, this is my club, dude. You know what I did to get this club? This club is awesome. Or have them like kind of registered or something, but then maybe they are kind of upgrading the rest of the things, or if they have this one thing they really care about. Don't be trying to be like, oh, well, you don't really want, that's a basic club, you don't want that, you want to get this +8 mace. They're like, no, man, I liked this club. So pay attention to what they liked, and then when they get up there on the surface, let them slowly move around. Honor their choices, but don't give them very many. And it's very easy by creating the setting what kind of choices you can give them. You're out there in the middle of nowhere. There's three little buildings here. There's farmhouses way off there. There's a little lake over here. There's rolling hill country. You see cattle and goats. And maybe even you look at the cow, you give them a little cutscene memory. And way off there, there's woods. And maybe way over there, there's some mountains or something. And then they can go and figure things out. Try to get to a town. Try to get to the mountains or to the woods and try to figure out what's gonna interest them. Try to interact with the people, and maybe they try to sit down and like have a normal life, or it allows them to engage, and for you, most importantly, to gauge where their interests are. So after you do this entry level character right for a little while, then you can kind of ratchet it up to something a little more complex. Like, okay, let's play a different game, and here's like 4 choices. A very simplistic. Kind of like you have, your more basic styles of D&D. It's like, well, here's a halfling. You don't get the class or anything like that. Don't be like, all right, so here's your character. Pick out advantages and skills and pick your weapon. It's just too much. Like it's too much for them. Let them build to it. Let them get the role playing game part right, because this is the bad thing about all the numbers. Like if they're thinking all numbers, they're not thinking about the role playing game, about the immersion. You're cutting your nose off to spite your face, you see. So don't worry, that's not the important part of the game. That can easily be developed and learned. The additional mechanical complexities, that's not going to add to their enjoyment right off the bat. I can almost guarantee you that. What will add to their enjoyment is simplicity. So go with the simplicity. Go with a style that's going to get the child to be outgoing, to interact, to press up against things. And maybe even to be scared of some things. Like, oh, there's that one terrible monster in there that I just had to run from. Oh, they're running, okay. Then maybe you amp it up a little bit. And, you really chase them. You really talk about the dark shadows and the terrible breath and all these things. And let them go. Encourage them to sell. Encourage them to get more of a character and to enjoy themselves. So that is going to be basically, a very sketchy outline there. And I could go more into detail. But I wanted to give the reasons more so than the actual deal. But I think you get it. A little underground deal that you go through just for a little while. And they're probably not going to want to play that long. Like to them, 2 hours is like forever. So if you run for 2 hours, put it away and then bring it back. Like with a little cliffhanger, like, oh, you're coming out. But then the next thing, like, oh, what do I see? What do I see? Okay, you start describing the village, and they come up and they start talking to people. And they're, oh, the horrible owl bears are out there eating us. And they're like, oh, what's an owl bear? They're like, oh, actually, I'll talk to you about that. So, you build up and you build so that you can have them beginning, because they don't know anything, right? They are a beginning role player, and then you build so that they can get better and better and better, instead of trying to force them to learn mechanical complexity at the sake. Avoid that. and figure out what they actually like, instead of trying to give them too many choices. Like, well, I got 18 skills, I don't really know. Well, you got like 3 skills now, dude. Just try to figure out what you can do with those, or basically taking any kind of action and seeing how that resolves, to allow them to really develop their own pace, their own style. And I think that's going to be really interesting. I definitely hope YouTube is still around, it's still popular. It doesn't get MySpaced, and I'm still doing videos, and just barely over 5 years at this point, and I can just kind of recap and tell you guys how that went, because that's definitely going to be one of the absolute highlights of my entire life, I'm sure. At least hopefully it won't be some horrible thing that will really suck, because that's something I've been looking for. So my wife told me she's pregnant, like, oh, how do I corrupt this one into a D&D player? How do I corrupt this one into an RPG player? How do I corrupt this one to play vampire and Call of Cthulhu, to read Lovecraft, and to like horror movies and all this kind of cool stuff? So that has been my twisted upbringing on him. So hopefully that was interesting and entertaining. I'd like to hear you guys' experience, what you think about that idea, and what you think about bringing children into the hobby, and how you like to do it.